Yuya never felt like he could quite fit in this world, but he still yearned to make a difference. He was Bullied Boy, gained a cheat skill in another world and became overpowered, then returned to the real world as the strongest. Even though he felt like an outcast, even though his heart was small, it was filled with kindness. One day, as he was walking down a narrow alley, he heard a girl screaming for help. Curious, he approached to see if he could help. However, as he got closer, he saw the girl being held captive by 3 menacing men who wouldn't let her go. Mustering all of his courage, Yuya has stepped forward and confronted the trio. The girl went over to help Yuya, who was crumpled on the ground when the police arrived just in time to frighten off the troublemakers. But Yuya, who had lost all sense of pride, merely stood up and walked away as he made his way home. Yuya recalled the wise lessons of his grandfather, who had always urged him to be kind to those in need. His grandfather had been his only ray of sunshine in an otherwise dark world, teaching him that in a world that had been unkind to him, he had found the courage to help someone in need. Even though it was just a small act of kindness, it showed that he was capable of making a difference. He knew that someday, just like his grandfather had taught him, he would find true happiness by being kind to others, and that courage would always light his path throughout his life. Yuya endured terrible bullying at school. His colleagues would take his clothes off to bully him while calling him ugly, and if it wasn't enough, he was also bullied at home by his parents, who deemed him unworthy of being their son. Because he didn't have the same beautiful face as his siblings, it was only his grandfather's love and guidance that had kept him going. But one day his sunlight turned into a dark, rainy day. His grandfather passed away, leaving him truly alone in this world, knowing what would happen to you if he went back to his parents' house. His grandfather left him with the house and his savings. His parents wanted to take it all, but since it was prepared by the grandfather, they simply disowned him, leaving their own son living alone and being forced to work part-time to survive. The following day, as Yuya attended his school graduation, he found himself facing his bullies once again. They had scrawled cruel insults all over his notebook. Desperate to escape, Yuya tried to flee, but the bullies chased him down and knocked him to the ground. He pleaded with them to stop, explaining that he needed to get to his part-time job, but the bullies only laughed, hurling more insults and beatings. Several students were gathered there, some of them snapping pictures and films. Yuya endured an afternoon of torture before making it to work, only to be fired for being late. Disappointed, he was sent home with only enough money for instant noodles for dinner. Yuya tried to remain strong and carry on with his life, but when he looked at himself in the mirror, he realized it was impossible, because he had assisted Click. Graduating would change everything, but nothing seemed different. Breaking the mirror, unable to stop himself, he struck the wall, which, to his amazement, moved to disclose a hidden entrance leading to a room. Yuya wasn't sure if his grandfather was aware of this chamber, but he could see trinkets from his grandfather's international travels. Yuya entered the room and found another mysterious door. When he opened it, he saw what appeared to be a mountain hut. Confused, he thought he had entered another world. He went back to the first room to double-check, and as he was looking at the door, another status window displaying the appraisal skill appeared. Other windows featuring menu options, money transfer functions, and entry restrictions then appeared. Despite her confusion, Yuya was able to understand the fundamentals. After reading more about the last window displayed his status, and to his shock, all of his numbers were a flat 1 point. Yuya discovered that he could use windows to assign points and use an item box to store items. But most importantly, he needed to figure out where he was. To do this, he opened a window in the room and peered outside. After taking in the scene, Yuya understood that he was in the middle of a lush forest in a completely different world. As Yuya's eyes scanned the table, he noticed something odd, a letter lying on its surface. Yuya began exploring the house, examining the various weapons and equipment stored with him. He picked up a sword that, upon using his appraisal skill, turned out to be incredibly dangerous. Nevertheless, his curiosity gets the best of him, and he steps outside to his yard and starts testing the sword. Due to the lack of stats, he clearly fails on his first attempt and ends up falling to the ground. However, a new window appeared, revealing that he had gained a point of proficiency. In sorts, he guesses that he got it that fast because he came from another world, and decides to see what happens by trying out several other weapons, earning 1 point of proficiency in each. But soon after mastering these skills, they vanished, merging into a single ability called True Martial Arts. As Yuya packed up his weapons into the item box, he suddenly heard footsteps approaching. He looks in its direction and sees a bloody ogre rushing towards him, ready to feast on his blood. Fortunately, the magic protecting the house formed a barrier that stopped the ogre from getting inside. Undeterred, the ogre continued its frenzied assault, trying to break through the barrier. Yuya checked the monster stats. That he had leveled up to level 100, and that all his stats had reached 10 points each. He approaches the location and finds out there are some equipment. And since he's too tired for the first shock, he decides to head back. and rest. As he approached the door, a cash-out window appeared out of nowhere. Money he could use in the real world materialized and fell to the ground. That night, however, turned into Yuya's worst nightmare. His bones, muscles, and skin began to shift back as he touched his face and hair. He realized his clothes were too big and that something about him had changed. He tries to check himself in the mirror, but there's no mirror anymore, and ends up not caring about it since his clothes don't fit him. He instead donned the clothes and equipment from the house in the other world and ventured outside. He discovered the previous owner had been growing vegetables, so he decided to maintain the garden in their honor. Suddenly, another level 200 monster starts to clash against the barrier, but this time Yuya is calmer than last time. He brings his spear out and easily defeats the monster. He checks the monster drops. There are some normal items. He heads back and decides to use the new cash-out money to buy a new uniform for his upcoming high school entrance. But until that day, Yui cared for the house in the new world, using his farmed vegetables for meals that end up improving his stats. He starts to happily enjoy his new days, thinking about how depressed he was to join high school after being bullied for all those years. But now he managed to overcome it and got more curious about this new world. There he used to train and level up his martial arts proficiency. He was eating some strange but tasty drops from the previous monsters. He was finally enjoying a happy life. But of course, monsters won't leave him alone. Just like this elite goblin, he stores all the drops in his box and is ready for his new school. Yulia finally enrolls in his new high school the next day, but is unaware that everyone is gawking at him and commenting on how attractive he is. He is in his new school when his previous bullies approach him. When his younger brothers and bullies cornered him in a remote area of the school next to the wayside. They tried to pressure him into explaining how he managed such an absurd change, but he gave an evasive response, which irritated them even more. Their verbal assault stops when a luxury car pulls up close to them. Corey recognizes that it was unpleasant of her to have him probed as a way of saying thank you, but she still asks him outright to enroll in UCI Academy, which catches him off guard. It is a very elite institution, so when Yuya's younger brother says that he recognized her from the school by her outfit, Yuya's confusion only deepens. Curry apologizes for the delayed introduction and explains that she is a student council representative at the school. Cool Parade then continues by stating that Curry's father is the chairman of the UCI Academy board, and when he heard that you had saved his daughter from some thugs, he wanted him to attend their academy. Although he doesn't feel as though he saved her because she was more likely to have been beaten, he must decline the offer because he doesn't have the necessary funds. They are aware of their daily spiteful acts towards him as it has all been thoroughly investigated, she says, adding that she is deeply indebted to him and wouldn't want anyone who insults him to enroll at the academy. The two fall to the ground in despair, knowing that their chances of ever attending such a school are impossible. Now, Kaori turns her attention back to you and explains that elite school prioritizes moral character over academic ability. The siblings and bullies promise to exact their vengeance as soon as the two get to the posh school. He then heads over to the CEO, who is embarrassed, begs him to speak up, saying that what he accomplished wasn't particularly amazing. The chairman adds that he should be proud of his efforts as they are a testament to his splendid character, which is what is most prized at the school. Her father believes that they all have their own unique talents that the school has to identify and nurture through challenging students in different ways. Ye decides to accept the offer and spend the day waiting outside the class as the teacher conducts a pre-introduction because he is anxious about how the other students will react to him because of his terrible prior experiences. The students adore her lessons because they are simple to understand, so Ye is to sit through one of her classes with things already planned. She motions for him to enter, but he hesitates for a while. He then comes forward and introduces himself formally to the class. The pupils briefly stare at him, which makes him feel awkward and like he messed up. A female student breaks the silence as she comments on how insanely handsome he is. All the girls are in shock and shaken by his presence. The number one pretty boy acknowledges him as a formidable rival. The teacher snaps them back to the moment she instructs him to sit by the window at the back row. The lesson begins, and the teacher pleads with Heidu to share her book with him. So they join their tables. After his first interaction with her, he feels like he messed up and that she hates him, but that is far from the case. Because with his new looks, even if he farted loudly in class, he will still maintain his Giga Chat status. As the lesson continues, he realizes that it isn't much different from the kind of classes he was used to. The main difference is that students here are more proactive, and it seemed like everyone is having fun, which is something he has never experienced before. After the class, a few students gather around him to learn more about the new student. Rhea says in telling them that they are overwhelming him, and they apologize. As they excuse themselves, he introduces himself and invites Jan to the cafeteria for some food. The newcomer is in awe at the variety and quality of the food available. He is even more surprised at how affordable it all is. Raya points out that if he's spoiled for choice, the daily special is a safe pick and it's free yet. Based on what he is seeing, he believes he is in paradise. They get their food, and as they try to find a seat, Shindo waves them over. As they sit down, Ahir realizes that they are into anime and video games like him. He also notices that everyone in the cafeteria is staring at him and determines that he makes the declaration following the meeting, demonstrating his respect for the chairman. Corey waits outside, anxious to know what his verdict is, so she is happy to hear that he wants to attend. She asks if he's free and interact with one another. Yuya is interested to know how she knew it was him despite his drastic transformation. She tells him that his eyes remain the same, so she knew right away from his honest and kind eyes. The girl's riz is too much. His start to blush as he addresses her formally. This annoys Curry a little because she thought at this point they have become quite friendly, so she wants him to address her by her first name to commemorate their friendship. They both take a bite of each other's crates, which makes them shy. All the girls around watch the romantic moment and pass comments on how cute it was. After his little date with Kaoria heads back home and puts on his new armor ready to head into the fantasy world. He's not sure how busy he will be once the enrollment procedures are officially complete, so he wants to spend some time leveling up in case he doesn't get the chance. He steps through the gate. Field looks into the deep forest. He is also surprised to see what looks like a human lady hiding. In fear, he dashes towards the general and launches his spirit, at which the creature easily deflects, but it leaves the monster open for a drop kick to the face, which knocks it back. The girl informs him of the incoming attack from behind. He evades, and after a few exchanges yet takes it down with a sword slice. He rushes over to the lady asking if she's okay, but she falls unconscious, wondering who he is. Soon after, a voice calls the name Lexia as it approaches. He uses his invisible skill to disappear just as they arrive. While he watches the unit rush over to the lady, they check for signs of life and are relieved to see she is breathing. Here episode 2 of this series end. Until then, watch our other anime, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe.